Hello and welcome to this video on the subject of format, aspect ratio and resolution. My name's Barry Beckham and this video is part of Photoshop for photographers. Recently I've been asking myself the question, should format, aspect ratio and resolution be a subject that I should include into an image editing video? And if I did, could I ensure that it didn't bore everyone to death? Because that is a distinct possibility when we start talking about these subjects. Experience tells me that many amateur photographers do need to raise their awareness of this subject. So here goes. Format and aspect ratio. They're terms that are often used to describe the same thing, but it's not entirely correct. Format just describes a shape. For example, we all recognize a square format, but one square can be small, one could be medium size, and one could be quite large, but they're all still square formats. Now I think we'd all recognize an oblong or a landscape format when we saw one. But if we take a landscape, it could be 3 centimeters long, 3 inches long, or even 3 feet long. But again, they would all still be landscape format or an oblong. So format doesn't really have very much to do with size at all. The term format doesn't even define the shape fully either, because we can have oblong or landscape formats that are all different lengths and heights, yet we would still call all of these landscape or oblong formats. When the term aspect ratio is used, it's usually in conjunction with a set of numbers which define the exact shape, such as a 3:2 aspect ratio, which is what we happen to be looking at here, which is pretty typical of what we would get from most digital SLRs. Then we have the 16:9 aspect ratio, which will match most of our PC screens, laptops and even modern televisions. And we may even see 4:3 aspect ratio. We see this in our compact cameras, maybe our mirrorless cameras, and it's also the aspect ratio of an iPad if you have one. Now these numbers we use, like 3:2, 4:3 and what we're looking at here, 16:9, these numbers pin down the exact shape, because if our picture is 16:9 we know exactly what landscape shape that is, but we still don't know the size because 16:9 could be centimeters, inches or feet. Now sometimes when we talk about aspect ratio, we not only include the ratio such as 16:9 that we can see here, but we also include a pixel measurement of 1920 pixels in width and 1080 pixels in height. Not only does the 16:9 aspect ratio now define the exact shape, but the pixel value defines the exact size too. When we start to consider resolution, we can in fact have two images, both at the same aspect ratio, and they can both be exactly the same size in inches, but they can have very different resolutions. Let's take a look at this, because on a large flat screen monitor like this one, there's not a lot of difference when we view both of these images one after the other. Now if you look up at the top left of this image, you'll see I've got two tabs. One is just called HR, which is high resolution, and one is low resolution. Currently we're looking at the low resolution. Let me switch to the other one. Did you see any difference? Let me go back to the low resolution. Still nothing, and back to the high resolution. Let's take a look at the image size window with the high resolution image. If you look right at the top here, you can see that the image size is showing as 48.4 megabyte, Now that's quite large, but in fact I've got images that go much bigger than that, 60, 70, 80 megabyte. You can see the dimensions just underneath, which are 5000 pixels by 3400, just to round them a little bit. We can see that the width of the image is 21 inches by 14, but we can see that in every square inch of the image I've got 240 pixels. Let's take a look at the low resolution example. Let me take you to the resolution first. If you remember, with the higher resolution we had 240 pixels in every square inch. Here's the major difference here. We've only got 72 pixels in every square inch. But when we jumped between the high resolution and the low resolution image, we can see that from an on-screen viewing point of view, there's little to choose between them. Now if we look further up the image size window, we can see that the width and height of the low resolution image is identical to the high resolution one. The big difference comes up here in the dimensions, and that impacts on the resolution that we see here, which we see as 72 pixels per inch, because with the high resolution image we had 5000 pixels on the long side. Here we've only got 1512, yet the image still looks pretty good when we view it on a large flat screen monitor like this. And of course the changes there and here also impact the image size. Instead of having a nearly 50 megabyte file, we've now got just over 4 megabyte. So if I close down the image size window here, and once again we move from a low resolution example to the high resolution, back to the low resolution and the high resolution, we can see no difference. The resolution that we choose for our image in pixels along the width and the height depends on what we're preparing the image for. If it's for a high quality print, then we need to ensure the image contains as many pixels as our camera can provide, irrespective of the physical size of the print we intend to make. If the image we're preparing is for on-screen viewing or for attaching to an email, then a high-resolution image is inappropriate. It's going to be far too large. In those circumstances, we need an image that looks great on screen, but once saved as a JPEG, can be displayed easily on any computer, or it can be attached to an email. Here we're looking at the low resolution example and the image size window. Just to remind us that the size of this image is 4.3 megabyte, remembering the original high-res one was 48 megabyte. But of course, if we save this image as a JPEG and we compressed the JPEG to a nice setting, a midway setting of about 8, then the size of this image comes down to 268 KB. That's kilobytes, a quarter of a megabyte, small enough to attach to any email or even post on the internet. Can I suggest that we look at this video as the theory behind format, aspect ratio and resolution? And in the next video we'll deal with the practical example of reducing the resolution of a high resolution image to one which would be suitable for an email attachment or maybe a camera club competition.